Welcome, everybody. We have Angela Laura here. Did I pronounce that right, the last name?
Gloria.
Gloria. So I figured I was going to mess it up. So anyway, we'll leave that on there for the realness. But this is the superstar publishing guru. Go out and start a movement and write a book and change the world. So I'm fascinated by what you've done. I've self-published 3 books and also 2 with clients. But I'm nowhere near your level. I mean, you have a castle and you have training facilities and you have all these things going on. So will you please tell our audience why you are so unique and what you're doing? Because you are doing some incredible things.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I managed to win. And I started the Author Incubator in 2013. And our goal was really to help what we call magic makers. So we work primarily with women, not exclusively, but about 90% women, about 38% people of color, 32% LGBT, voices that are not commonly heard. And our goal was to use books to exalt or amplify those voices. And so there are a lot of paths out there for publishing, self-publishing or traditional publishing. But there are very few people that focus on kind of the alternative voices and alternative narratives, which is how we focused. Our special sauce is that everyone who signs up to work with us gets their book finished within 9 weeks. So, and my story behind that is kind of twofold. There's a very boring story, which is I spent 17 years as a ghostwriter. And as a ghostwriter, you've always got between 8 and 12 weeks to get your book done. So my system and the way I've always written books allows you to do it really effectively and really quickly. That's the boring side. On the other side, and I do believe this is true, like time is speeding up, the earth is grinding to a halt. We got California is on fire, oceans are drowning out islands, and I don't think we have time to wait. And so if it can take you a year to write a book that makes a difference or 9 weeks, my philosophy is let's get it done in 9 weeks because we've got people's lives to change. People need us right now.
Well, that's awesome. Now, how do you do that? Do you have like an upfront interview process? It's like pretty intense. I also noticed on your website that you are like, hey, you have to apply to work with us. We get a lot of people that want to work with you. And you're really looking for things that touch people's heart, or these things that can be a movement, whether it's not, maybe you haven't gotten the next Dr. Martin Luther King yet, but it's probably coming. That person's probably coming. Yeah.
Hope, healing, and transformation. So that's the theme. The applications, we get about 1,500 applications a month, and we take anywhere between 25 and 30 of those. So it's like the top 0.5% that make it through. And what we are really looking for are people who have a message of transformation in relationships, transformation in health, transformation in business. We do a lot of business books of new paradigms for business and how to run your team. That's what my most recent book was about. But really about how do we create a new earth together. And like I said, we get 1,500 applications a month, but you never get so sexy that ugly guys don't whistle at you. So a lot of those applications are not pretty. And we have about 300 or 400 interviews that we'll conduct every month. So, 1,000 of those applications just end on the floor.
Yeah.
But we'll probably explore 30 to 40 and end up making 50 to 60 offers, and then we end up with 25 to 30 clients.
And that's per month or per year?
Per month, yeah.
Yeah, per month. That's busy. So one of the questions I had for you that's kind of interesting is a lot of people go out and want to consult on something, want to drive something better, and yet they stay solo, or a very small team. Now, your organization, if I'm understanding correctly, exceeding $10 million, and you've got a castle and a training facility. You've been able to take this and really kind of extend this out. Can you explain that to our audience? Because I think that's unique. A lot of these people get stuck.
Yeah, well, I started off as a solopreneur for sure in 2013 and started hiring in 2016 around. We do about 1.5 million a month in revenue, and we have 45 employees. So about 18 million a year, 45 employees. And what I found with my authors is by year 2 or 3, their revenue is at a point where they just can't do it alone anymore. So we can usually, within 2 years, we get people to about a half a million. And they can still do it alone at a half a million. But by year 3, when they're approaching that $1 million mark, that's when hiring becomes important. And that's why my new book is Make 'em Beg to Work for You. And it's how to build an aligned team. Because as we're moving along, we're now 6 years in business. We have more and more clients that have needed our advice in building teams. Our team has grown. And it's really about a steady, repeatable, regular flow of clients. And that's what a book can bring to you, is just that repeatable flow of business. And then you can build a team because you know exactly how much money you're going to make every month. When you have 1,500 applications, then you can say, hey, I'm not taking more than 30 people. And the quality of those people go up, but you keep delivering the exact same stuff, then you could get more off your plate. And that's what I like, are just training people on how to build a repeatable, steady flow of business. I'm very anti-launch, like any of that. Like, we're going to do a launch one day. Like, let's help people right now. My goal for my clients is to take one client a week, one sales call a day, one client a week. You do that, you can build a $500,000 business very easily.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. So when you talk about them building these organizations to support themselves, many of them are moving into leadership roles without ever having been a leader before. They may have some leadership attributes, but no real skills. So what does your book have to say, or how do you help your clients in those areas?
Well, I didn't write a leadership book this time, but I will say leadership comes up a lot. And it is one of the biggest challenges, I would say, that our authors have. They have this incredible body of knowledge and expertise on how to, let's say, stop inflammation in the body. We work with a lot of functional medicine doctors and PharmDs and people in that space, right? So they know exactly how to calm inflammation in your body, but how to like manage a team, hold space for staff, hold space for clients, all of that stuff is like, they were not teaching that in med school, right? And what we focus on is becoming the person who leads the movement you want to lead. Where would you be calling in support? Where would you be calling in training? Where are your areas for growth? Frankly, almost everything is 80% mindset. And what I find the biggest mistake our authors make is they wish it were easier. They would like to lead a movement if it's easy. And it's the news flash is, this shit's going to be hard. If you want it to be easy, go be a dental hygienist. I am frequently sending them the links to vocational training schools. I'm like, go take a job and be an amazing employee if that's what you want to do, because leading a movement is going to require you to step the hell up.
Yeah. And so when they're, I noticed that you have some hiring tips as far as, and that's near and dear to our hearts here at Manage to Win. So what do you advise them as far as when they're hiring, like those first few people?
So before you hire the first few people, you have to figure out what problem, other than paying the bills, does working for you solve for that employee. This is the critical missing step. This is missing in top grading. It's missing in Good to Great, in all the business books, E-Myth, all those books we love as business nerds. And I know you're in the club. They all miss out on the fact that there has to be a reason now. And I think millennials have ushered this in for us. And I think this is the great gift of the millennials. A lot of people, I'm 46. And a lot of Gen Xers like me, like they complain millennials are so entitled. Let me tell you what millennials are entitled to. They're totally entitled. They're like, there is no way I am giving 40 or 50 hours of my time for any amount of money to something I don't believe in. They are entitled to dedicating their time to things they believe in. Shouldn't we all be entitled to that? That seems like a good idea to me. So you have to know who you are and what your company offers as a gift, as a service role. What can you give that employee that is going to enrich their life? And most of us think the answer is a fucking paycheck. Please shut up and be happy I'm giving you money. That does not work with millennials. They're like, money, I could live at my parents' house.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to do something that's out of alignment for $5,000 a month. That makes no sense. And we all know it makes no sense, right? Because money is entirely replaceable and time isn't. So they're like, if I'm going to do nothing, I would rather do that on a couch with Netflix than moving your agenda forward. And almost every company I see out there with hiring problems, it's because they don't know who they are as a company or what problem they will solve for their employees. And the problem you have to solve for your employees is giving meaning to their life beyond a paycheck.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think also with the millennials, have you found that they have a pretty sensitive truth meter? Because they realize so much stuff online is BS. It's not true. It's
Totally.
fabricated, exaggerated, whatever it is. And so if you try to stretch anything with these folks,
They're
they're
not
going to
going to
pick up
represent
on
it.
it real fast.
They will not represent that shit. My team is amazing. It's largely millennials because, of course, the workforce in general is largely millennials. But I will say my youngest employee is, I have a 15-year-old intern. And then my oldest employee right now is 76, I think. So we've got boomers and we've got Gen Z or whatever they're called. But obviously the bulk of my employees are millennials. And if I ever do anything out of integrity, I watch their productivity go down almost instantly. And I'm like, my immediate reaction is total gratitude because I'm like, how can I be more in alignment? Like, I see you're not working. That means I'm out of alignment. How do I fix this? And now we've just reversed it. I'm like, hey, I am going to fuck up because I'm a human. And so when you see me do something out of alignment, it's your job to call me. That is part of your job as an employee here, is to call me out on being out of alignment. And it's a very cool calibration system once you get it. The title of my book is Make 'em Beg to Work for You. And the secret of my book is you have to be awesome. You have to be vulnerable and authentic and making a difference and committed. If you want someone to beg you to give you 50 hours a week of their time, you are going to have to be really ready to step up in ways you never signed up for when you just thought you wanted somebody to do your bookkeeping. Or like, could you please answer my emails? Like, why do I have to step up to a new level? But that's what we're being called to as leaders.
Well, let's stay there for a moment. And I'm sure your book talks about it because, you're dealing with people who have a particular passion, a particular skill set, and they dive into the workplace. And what they understand is going and doing stuff, related to their expertise. They're a technical person. They're doing technical work. You mentioned some different healthcare professionals. They're doing their deal, whatever it might be. So they're doing all this stuff. And when they look at their calendar, they fill it with that stuff. And they don't leave that time for engaging with the employees, training them, developing them. We like to say there's four management disciplines. It's how you hire, manage, develop, and retain people. But they didn't build that into their calendar.
They just got the hiring part down. And then they're like, awesome, I hired someone. Thank you for solving all my problems.
Yeah, goodbye.
And then
I got to go do my
when
stuff.
that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I know this because I was that person. I remember I think I had maybe 8 employees and things started to really get busy. And so I hired this amazing woman who had been a COO at several companies. And I'm like, you'll report to me. I'm going to have you manage the 8 people because it's getting to be too much for me now. And you just do your CEO stuff or your COO stuff and go operationalize them. And then I'll just check in with you once a week and see what they're doing. And I couldn't understand why this didn't work. Like, I hired her and I thought she was supposed to come in and save me from my organization. And of course, she didn't know what my values were. She didn't know what I really wanted. So she would try and come in and do things and they would be out of alignment with what I wanted. Employees were getting, one of the first things she did was she put in a weekly scorecard where you could write what you did every week. And my team was like, if we have to do this, we quit. So it created all these other problems because I had nothing in the plan for onboarding, managing. Like, it was just like, well, you know how to COO, go COO for me. And it more is required of you, even if you are a visionary CEO, even if you're one who wants to, my expertise is in coaching and doing the work of extracting books out of people. I don't really want to do all those other things. But if you want to be a CEO, you have to be willing to do all four of those disciplines you mentioned. And for us, our onboarding process this is tied in with our financial system. So I know exactly how much I'm going to make every month in advance, give or take 10%. Our projections are really good. And if you're thinking about hiring a team, getting good at projecting your revenue was one of the big breakthroughs for me. Once you know what your revenue is, you should be hiring someone 3 months before you need them. And our first 3 months with any new employee, we don't expect any ROI from them. We're not expecting them to actually make us money or give us a return on our investment in them. For 3 months, it's straight training. And we have a very deliberate training process. Then when we can start giving stuff to them to really own, they own it all the way instead of creating mischief and chaos.
Yeah, that's very unique. I mean, it's pretty rare, and you see that. And so I would also think that you retain people much longer too, because they get off on such a solid footing, have a good foundation, and they're fully engaged when they get past that 90 days.
Yeah. And almost everybody makes it, but we also have a check-in at that 90-day point. In fact, my meeting right after this one is a 90-day check-in with one of our new cover designers. And we get to have a heart-to-heart at the 90-day mark saying, is this working? Is this really how you want to spend 40 to 50 hours a week? Like, is this really aligned with your vision? And is it working for us? And there's a very nice natural break point at 90 days where if we feel like we're not going to be able to let you fly and it's going to be massive return on investment for us, then we have a way of parting ways. I have a chapter on letting people go with love. And we have a way of kind of yielding that relationship to what it wants to be after we've made that 90-day investment. Like, after we've really explored it, and not like a week in saying like, hey, this is a disaster, which is, by the way, what I did with Karen, that COO that I hired back in the day. And I was like, well, this is a disaster. She's not solving all my problems.
Yeah. Wasn't a match. Maybe great in another role, another company type of thing, but not here.
Yep.
But in your 90-day onboarding process, I'm kind of curious. I Are they attached to like a mentor, or is it their boss that's kind of driving them
Sometimes
through, or
it's
what?
multiple. The way we do it, they do have a hiring manager. Here's what we do. We break down a job into every single thing that you will do in that role. And then what most people do is they spend the first week and you like drink from a fire hose and you take notes in a notebook you'll never read again. And if you did read it, it would make no sense to you. It'll be like, put decimal after, and then after is like circled, put decimal after numbers. And you're like, well, that seems important. I have no idea. Decimal number, what? It's like, so instead we only give you one thing at a time. You get one task at a time, and until you have total mastery of that task. So you learn one task, and then you will own that task. And when you have total mastery over it, then we add a second task. So we pay for 40 hours a week of work. And at the beginning, most of our employees maybe work an hour a week and then just hang out at our offices or read whatever. We're not really giving them work. We let them master one task at a time.
Okay. And then are there check-ins where basically if you've got somebody, I would assume something in the process where similar to your COO experience, if whether it's 1 week in, 3 weeks in, or 5 weeks in, if it's not a match for whatever reason, then you can give them the love thing and, part company.
Yeah, we usually wait 90 days to let somebody go unless it's a total disaster. We have had total disasters where it's like, whoa, it's really bad. But a lot of times people are just really quiet. Like, I want more pep in their step. I'm like, what's happening? But they're just, people take a long time to process stuff. You've been thinking about this shit for years. It's so obvious to you. They don't even really know what you're saying. They don't know how to comment. So if it looks like somebody's clueless, I will still let it ride for longer, I think, than most people. So I have a philosophy I think you'll really find confronting. My philosophy is hire fast, fire slow. I know everyone disagrees with me, but their way isn't working. So the idea is we're going to take a long time to decide whether to hire someone and make sure we know them. Because somehow this is supposed to give us a guarantee that when they get in the job, they'll be a right fit. But really all it does is increase our disappointment when it doesn't work out. I think the chance of it not working out is exactly the same. We're just more disappointed this way. One of the
It,
gifts, I think, of feminine intuition is that we can really read people and sense. And of course, we all have the divine masculine, the divine feminine inside us. So tapping into that like part of your heart that's like, this is a person I want to work with, you can do it super quickly. And if it's a disaster, knowing there's a way out of it is to me so much freedom. So I'm like, as soon as you get a hit, you're supposed to hire them, hire them. And we have a whole hiring process to make that happen. And then everybody says fire fast because if you know they're a disaster, you're never going to be able to recover them. But of course, that we know how mindset works. Our thoughts create our reality. So the minute you think, well, if this person is a disaster, I'll just fire them, they become a bigger and bigger disaster. Once you start thinking of firing someone, everything they do, it's a selective observation. We're like, and then they left a plate in the sink. Can you believe it? Like everything they do annoys you. So we assume if we had a heart connection with somebody and we felt like they were a soulmate for our business, we assume there is some version of working together that is divinely aligned and we can find it. So I say fire slow and look for alternative configurations, different jobs, part-time. It could just be contracting, but like try and find a way to make this work for longer than you want to, because you're sabotaging what could be great people and great relationships because they're just not in an aligned role. If they are still values aligned. If they're not values aligned, then you have to let them go with love so they can be in a space where they are aligned with their values.
yeah, it sounds to me like you lean very heavily on the values alignment or cultural alignment in the hiring. And once you've got that clicking, then you're willing to gamble on the 90 days.
Yep.
Okay. And it's interesting because we have a very detailed hiring process. We're actually building out the scripts. We're almost done with the scripts for 50 self-led training, things on how to hire, and then over 200 sample documents stuff. We call it Hire the Best. It'll actually be a book next year, which
Nice.
we haven't gotten to the point yet. Maybe we need to talk to you. And it's interesting what you do actually with your 90 days is an extension of something that I teach that everybody must do when you're hiring for every position. You just do it as an extension. You do it as 90 days. I call it a test drive. So you can interview with people and you can do all kinds of things, and it can be very valuable and it's important. And in particular, I agree with you. You have to have the culture match. But then I say you've got to have at least an hour or two, if not hire somebody for a full day or a week as a contractor to come in and do actual work to see how well they work with you. And what you've done is you've kind of put that on steroids. You're like, hey, I believe in people so much and I believe in our culture so much that if I feel I've got a cultural match, I'm going to commit 90 days to this person, as you say. If I've got them in the wrong role, probably I just got them in the wrong role. I got to move them somewhere else, but they're still going to be a great contributor because they're a match on our values and our culture.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something else. I love that you call it a test drive. We do something like that in our interview process. You have to do a 1 to 2 hour project that is within the job description before you get an interview. So if we like your application, we have you do a project, and it might be edit a chapter of a book, or it might be, it might have something to do with how you would write a draft letter to a client. Like one of our finance things is if you have a client who hasn't made a payment, what would be your plan for how to get a payment from them, what would be the schedule, and what are those emails? Write them. So for every job, we have a 1 to 2 hour assignment, and we say instead of an interview where you're just going to bullshit us, and if you're a good interviewer, we'll think you'll be good at the job, and if you're a bad interviewer, we'll think you suck. We just have you do a project. We won't use it. And if we love it, we will pay you. Like we've had a couple people do some things that we wanted to use and we'll pay them. The person I have my 90-day review with shortly did an amazing book cover. And so we would pay them as a contractor for that book cover if we decided to use it. But yeah, we have them do the project. And then if we love the project, we interview them. But the purpose of the interview is to find the win-win and to talk about the terms of the job. What gets you a job with us is actually doing a project, because that's where we feel like we get all our interview questions answered.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense. And do any of those projects actually interact with other people for them to get it done, or is it more something they're doing solo and then they're bringing it
It's
back and
mostly
presenting it?
solo. Sometimes there's interaction depending on the job, but we wouldn't have them interact like with we'd have them interact with a team member, but not with a client.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
But we do sometimes have confederates. So we'll have somebody in our organization that's pretending to be a client because we want to see. We're like, hey, call this client and do this thing, or call this vendor. So one of our jobs, one of our executive assistant roles, you have to book 3 cars for a car detailing, and it has to happen at the same time. And then we give you the number for the car detailing service, but it's just a confederate. It's one of our employees. And so when they call, we see, are you nice to service people? It's somebody on our team that has an accent. So we want to see how you treat people that have differences, because diversity is a core value. And then we set it up so there's no way to get all 3 detailing set up at once.
Right.
So we want to know, do you come back with questions? Are you mean to the person? Do you try and get it done that way? Do you go on your own and find another car detailing service and do it at the same time? I don't really care what you do, but how do you problem solve, or do you expect me to problem solve for you?
I love that. I love that, because when I tell my clients to do the test drive, I always say include one thing that's impossible.
Yes.
To see how they handle it, because you want to have one thing that's impossible, and exactly the same thing. But I love it. That's great. So
we have another one for our bookkeeping role where we're calculating royalties, but our authors get royalties from about 15 different countries. And so when you look at the royalty, we give them a spreadsheet and it's got a bunch of names and a bunch of royalties. And we're like, can you just like do a pivot table or however you want to do it, but tell me the total I owe each of these authors. And so there's 10 different authors and maybe 100 different entry lines, 130 entry lines. And you should just do a pivot table, sort by name and sum them up. But if you don't look close enough, you'll miss the fact that they're all different currencies. And you can't just do a currency calculation on today. You have to know what day the payment was made into the account to do the currency calculation. And you don't have access to the bank account to see what the currency calculation was. So it's an impossible task unless you know that date. And so I like it when people come back and they'll say, hey, I calculated this. I noticed they were in different currencies. I just did it off of today's. But if you want me to, like, if they notice, oh, today's calculation is not relevant, but they do it anyway. So like, this is a ballpark, but I need these dates. That's the perfect answer. But most of the time, 90% of the time, candidates sum it up in different currencies. They don't even notice that some are pounds and some are euros and some are yen.
yeah, so you've got these people on your team, you've hired them, and things are going forward. What's the biggest challenge you have in keeping them fully engaged, keeping them on the team?
Oh, like what stops them from quitting?
Yeah, and not only just stops them from quitting. I don't want them to move into idle mode where they're just showing up, but they're not very productive. I mean, what keeps them passionate
Well,
about
I have
what they're doing?
two answers to that because they're slightly different. The thing for sure that keeps my team passionate are the results our clients get. So we have about 76% of our authors will make $100,000 from their book within a year. And another 20%, not an additional 20%, but 20% of that 76% end up crossing the $250,000 mark. And then we always have a few people who make $1 million in a year from their book. And those success stories, like we had one of our authors who, and these are people, mostly we work with women who have never really made their own money. Like very often they've been in relationships where the bulk of their income or wealth was coming from a partner. And so we have so many women that have retired their husbands, which is like super cool. But we had this one super touching story. One of our authors, her sister got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and they had a working class family, and nobody had a lot of extra money, but she was able to get a beach house on the ocean that was big enough. It had 8 bedrooms, so the entire family, anyone could come visit. She moved her sister to this beach house, and she died about a month or two later. But she was able to pay for the beach house for anyone who wanted to come, for an Ayurvedic chef to take care of her sister's nutritional needs. And she was able to hospice her herself. And they brought in hospice care that was on her insurance, but on the ocean, which was her sister's favorite place. And that would not have happened if she didn't write a book that makes a difference with us. And those stories, which we hear every day, that's what keeps my team engaged. Now I want to answer the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge part is I teach people how to pretty easily make $1 million. And so now I have noticed a lot of my teaching has been on why it's awesome to be an employee, because my team hears my teaching all the time. And so I say all the amazing things about entrepreneurship, like flying private is pretty fun, I got to say. But flying private, which is a delightful benefit, comes with a whole lot of stress and space holding and so many hard things that you don't have to deal with as a dental hygienist. So I have to talk about the virtues of being an employee, of having employees, of the fact that 85% of people are employees. Most people have a job for a reason. This entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Like,
Yeah.
this is hard. Like, it's really hard. And the cash is nice, but they hear me talk about it and train on it. And a lot of them will get a bee in their bonnet that they want to be an entrepreneur. And I may notice they don't have the things it takes to be an entrepreneur. And so that's the hardest thing for me to holding on to my best talent is I'm such an amazing coach at how to make lots of money. And I don't, I can't pay my employees millions of dollars. They get very regular salary. I think we pay people well and fairly, but there's obviously a lot more upside if you're willing to take the risk of entrepreneurship.
No, it's an ongoing struggle. I don't think it's really structured well for companies to communicate all that they do for employees beyond salary, the taxes, the benefits, the time off,
I
the
literally
workspace, the other
wept
thing, the
when I
stress.
realized this. I remembered my last corporate job. And it snows in the Washington, D.C. area where I am.
Yeah.
And at this job, every single time I went to the office, there was no snow in the parking lot. I was able to pull my car into a space near the door. And not once was I grateful for that. Like, not once. And now as an employer, I'm like, oh my God, I was never grateful for the paper towels in the bathroom. Like, I was never grateful that my trash got taken out. I was never grateful for the door locks. If anything, I was annoyed by these stupid friggin' key fobs. Now I'm one of those people. And I was like, why is everything so hard? Why can't the doors just magically be open when I want them to be open? Like, those friggin' key fobs cost me like $1,200 a month. I was never grateful for that. And I got to call those people at Data Watch. I have to hire someone to call people at Data Watch to get me keys that half the time don't friggin' work.
Yeah, no, that's a
Never
huge
was
thing.
I grateful for that as an employee. And if you want to do entrepreneurship, it's like key cards times 10,000.
So Angela, you've been incredible in this interview. I love it. How can people get a hold of you? Again, tell them the name of the book. How to get people to beg to work for you, right? Is that
Yeah, I have a copy here. It's Make 'em Beg to Work for
all
You.
right?
7 steps to find, hire, manage, reward, and release all stars to help make your dream a reality. They can get that for free over at theauthorincubator.com. If they click on the library, that along with all of my books are free. You can buy it on Amazon. I think it's $14.95. $15 if you want to buy it on Amazon, or I'll give it to you for free over at theauthorincubator.com/the-library, or just go to the library. You'll see the 1,100 books that we have published in the last 6 years. And then my 5 books, I do one a year. So my 5 books are right along the top, and you can get all of them for free. If you're thinking about writing a book, there's lots of instructions on how to write a book, how to market a book, how to publish a book, and then how to hire a team to help make your authorpreneurship a reality.
Awesome. Well, I encourage the audience to check it out. Thank you so much for being with us here today. This has been great.
Thanks so much for having me, David.